Well, I was with the Celtics. I was down in New York, and I knew a guy. I met a guy that knew Jackie personally. He said, "Would you like to meet him?" I said, "Of course I would." And one of the first times that I'd ever met a guy made me speechless. I was standing there talking to Jackie Robinson, and I just couldn't imagine anything more significant or good or nice than meeting Jackie Robinson in person. And to have him call me Bill, it's like, it just doesn't get any better. But one regret that I have even today, I was unable to adequately express the respect and affection I had for him to him. I guess he must have thought I was a little nuts because I just looked at him with my mouth open and not able to say anything.
Absolutely love that interview from now the late, great Bill Russell, of course, one icon talking about his icon and his man that he absolutely loved in terms of Jackie Robinson. We lost Bill Russell, an absolute gem of a human being, a legend in the sport of basketball. You can see there a resume that speaks for itself. Bill Russell passing away over the weekend at the age of 88. Joining me now here on High Heat is longtime Boston Globe columnist Dan Shaughnessy. And Dan, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for taking a few minutes to be with us. But just tell me a little bit more about your memories of Mr. Bill Russell and just what a magnanimous personality he was. And obviously his production on the court speaks for itself, but he was so much more than that.
Well, I love that clip that you guys just showed. I haven't seen that in a long time. And of course, it's nice to have a Bill tie into baseball. And that's it right there. He was a pallbearer at Jackie's funeral years later. And I knew of Bill because Frank Robinson, when I covered the Orioles, Frank and Bill were high school teammates with Veda Pinson. I mean, and Frank always made a big deal out of, yeah, I did all the scoring on that team. I was the shooter on our team in basketball. And Bill did not play baseball, but Frank was out there with Kurt Flood and Veda Pinson, McClymonds High School in Oakland. So he had good connections to that. And Frank always went to the Celtics games or the Clippers games, Laker games, would see him out there. But for me, growing up as a child in New England in the 50s and 60s, the Celtics were it. We had this team that always won. And they won 8 straight championships. I was in high school before I realized they don't win the championship every year. And going back to Russell getting here in 57, until they clean up against the Lakers in 69, they won 11 times in 13 years of his career. He is the constant. Red Auerbach left the bench. Bob Cousy retired. Havlicek didn't come along until 62, 63. Russell's there for all of them. And it's weird to be living in a life without Bill Russell today. I got the news yesterday, and of course we all went to work. I spoke with Bob Cousy, who'll be 94 next week, and talked about what a teammate he was, what an individual he was, how smart and headstrong he was. He didn't play the fool for anybody. He took no quarter, and he stood up for what he believed in to his dying breaths. And this was a man that in Boston, we've got the Mount Rushmore, of course. We got Ted Williams, we got Bobby Orr, we got Tom Brady, but Bill Russell, 11 championships in 13 years, that's a tough one to beat.
What made him such a special player?
Well, it's really a good question because if you look at the box scores, you're like, okay, a lot of rebounds, but never scored 20 points per game in a season. I think he topped out at like 16. He didn't need the rock. And this is what was so great to be a child growing up in this era for our parents and our teachers and our coaches. We had this model franchise where the best player did not need the ball, didn't need the ego, didn't need the stats. The Celtics never had a scoring champ. They were team above self. And if you watch the clips of Russell when he's blocking shots, he's not swatting him into the seats to impress the cheerleaders. He's tipping it to a teammate to get the fast break going, exploit this. He was a very smart man. He got into the other team's head. Read his books. They're still out there. And Go Up for Glory, Second Wind, Diary of an Opinionated Man with Taylor Branch. There's a lot of stuff in there that's very cerebral. And it's one thing when you're a sports writer, you want to be an athlete, but it's bad when the athletes are better writers than you are. And we experienced this with Bill Russell as well.
What do you think he thought of today's game?
He was never one to say it was better in my day. The one thing he would do would be He didn't like comparing, is Michael Jordan the greatest ever? Were you the greatest ever? Is LeBron? He didn't get into that. There's all these great players. Some have other skills than others, but he would just catalog great players. He wanted to make sure that Oscar Robertson wasn't forgotten, Elgin Baylor wasn't forgotten, and of course Wilt, with the rivalry that they had. So he wasn't about grudging about the money or things from today or the 3 points. You wouldn't get that from Bill Russell. When he talked about the game, he respected winners. He loved being at the NBA Finals to hand out his MVP trophy named after Bill Russell. Who else? And so he had respect for today's game, but would always back up the competition that he played against, because in those days there were only 8 or 9 teams. People say, well, that was an easier league to win in. No, it wasn't. The concentration of talent was in those 8 or 9 teams. So you were playing somebody good every night. It faced Chamberlain. It faced Nate Thurmond. It faced Willis Reed, Walt Bellamy. Just, every night a good player on the other side.
Certainly the MVP Finals trophy named after him. He never won the award himself, Dan. You know that better than anybody because it was created after he retired. But what an absolute career Bill Russell had. A legend on the court and off. The world of sports and basketball certainly lost an icon when we lost him. I want to ask you your opinion, though, on the current Boston Red Sox. Nobody knows that town better than you, the sports in that town better than you. And this is a rough year for the Sox. And it appears that Xander Bogaerts and Devers are there to stay. What do you think happens with JD Martinez?
Right. I think Bogaerts and Devers are there to stay this year. They're not going to be moved at the deadline. So at the end of the season, Bogaerts can leave, and then they've got to negotiate with Devers his walk years after next year. But the players that they have, they've got some high payroll guys. JD, clearly a guy, he's a DH veteran guy, has been on 4 teams, been a good career October guy. And he's got a big bat. Now, he hasn't really shown well in the last 2 or 3 weeks leading into the deadline, but people know what he can do. And a team that wants to pick up a bat, that's going to be in play. The Sox, maybe they'll hold out for too much. They're trying to middle this thing to be, to be sellers and still have the illusion of contention, because the wild card kind of makes it where it's impossible to play yourself out of the thing. The Sox have tried darn hard to play themselves out of the thing, but theoretically, they still have, 12% chance of making the wild card round. So they're kind of straddling the line there. Valdi's in play. I think Christian Vasquez is in play. I do think some of their high payroll guys will go for prospects and chips at this time between now and tomorrow night.
If they are buyers, they could certainly use an upgrade at first base, and they could use starting pitching. In your estimation, though, are they buying or are they selling?
I think they're selling, but they're going to want you to think both, and that's a hard line to play. They have left those positions open for a long time. This is a year and a half now. Nobody playing first base. I've never seen anything like it for what you will be a big middle of payroll next year, and it's the Tampa Bay model. Interchangeable parts. No one is going to take care of it. And we'll just see what we can do by spending half the money and win just as many games and still creep into the wild card.
Yeah, it's been incredible with this division this year. Of course, as you know, Dan, we thought maybe 4 teams from the AL East are going to get into the postseason because of the new format, and the Red Sox may not be one of the 4. Okay, I want to talk to you about your book that you have coming out. Very excited to get our hands on this one and read it. Tell me a little bit more about Wish It Lasted Forever, Life with the Larry Bird Celtics.
Well, the book's available on Amazon now. And again, this was a chance, I'm old enough where I covered the NBA when we really got to know the players. And you travel with them, you live with them. So that special time, you're talking about Bill Russell in his era, that ends in the late 60s. NBA had trouble in the 70s, but in the 80s, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, that became the Ali Frazier of the NBA, put him on the map. That's followed by Michael Jordan, David Stern. They become a global entity that they are today. This book is sort of a love letter to the times when we were on the buses with them, we were in the hotel lobbies, drinking beers after the games, really getting to know what they were like and tell you what they were like. And Larry Bird comes across on these pages like never before. I think you'll enjoy it. And again, those guys had reverence for Bill Russell because they were taught. Those banners up there, they're because of one guy, Bill Russell. And that was a continuation that Red Auerbach fostered with his players and kept that going right into today.
And Dan, that was the time back in the day when they used to play defense. I'm looking forward to reading that book. Thank you so much, Dan Shaughnessy, as always, for taking the time. A wonderful columnist, longtime columnist with the Boston Globe. Thanks so much.